Hey everybody, welcome to the BeeGuards podcast. This very exciting project that we are running over the next years within the European Union, financed by the European Union. We have lots of different exciting work packages, and today I'm so happy I'm sitting in beautiful Tallinn. We are at the Whoopie conference where you, Giles Budge, just yesterday made a very, very nice presentation of our project to the big audience, because this is important that we are telling people what we are doing. And you are the leader of the work package 6, which I find a little bit complicated work package, but now you're here to put light on your work package. Giles, give it a go. Please tell us what is going to happen in work package 6.
Well, hi Fleming, and hello to anyone who's listening. So work package 6 is really all about pests and pathogens, and it's about trying to better understand how some of abiotic drivers. So what's an abiotic driver?
Yeah, what is
I hear you shout, right? An abiotic driver is something which doesn't have a biological origin. So climate might be an abiotic driver. Management by beekeepers might be an abiotic driver. Landscapes could be abiotic drivers, but all of these different abiotic drivers can affect whether or not we have issues with different pests, different pathogens, call them diseases from now on if you like. And our work package is trying to bring together expertise from across the European Union and beyond to try to help us to manage those pests and diseases better in the future. I think where our work package differs from some of the other work packages is that we're going to have a real deep dive into the underlying biology of some of these pests and pathogens, and we're hopefully going to come away with some really interesting findings, some primary research, if you like, as well as some overarching recommendations for beekeepers.
So this is very nice. I would call it, could I allow myself to call it the environment around the beekeeping?
Yeah.
So to say, to dig in there.
Yeah.
And I believe we forget that. Like the beekeeping practice of the beekeepers, it's not, to be honest, it's not so well described actually.
No.
So give us some examples on your different...
Yeah, but just to pick up on that concept of environment, it's really important. So if you're thinking about pests and diseases, then pests and diseases aren't a problem. The same diseases and pests aren't a problem in different parts of Europe. Okay, so there are papers that have been published in the past that tell us that certain diseases have a certain geography. Okay, and that's important. There are papers that have come previously that tell us that certain ecotypes of bees cope better with pest pressure in their own home location, which is their environment, right? So it's important that when we're trying to better understand and improve beekeeping resilience, that we try to factor those things into the tasks that we're trying to achieve within BeeGuards Work Package 6.
And tell me about that. What kind of activities is going to happen there?
Yeah, okay, so we've got 5 different tasks that we're going to talk about today within this particular work package. And the first one I wanted to mention was about trying to develop a model for reproduction of Varroa in honeybee colonies.
Please do so.
So the models that have come before, all very good pieces of work, all useful to bring to the literature. They tend to be models that operate at the level of cohorts or populations. Okay, what we're going to try and do is develop these things called individual-based models. So an individual-based model is something where every individual mite or every individual bee has an assignment. It has a place within that population, and it can interact. Where a bee can interact with another bee, or a mite can interact with a specific bee in different ways. So what individual-based models are really good at is trying to understand what the result of some fundamental underlying processes are. And what's different to the models that are out there is that the models that are out there are very good at saying, well, this is what we see happening overall, but we don't know why. We can't understand which are the biological properties of the mite or the bee or the environment that might be driving those changes in overall population behaviour.
Yeah.
So what's really cool about this is that we're operating at the individual mite level, and we're going to marry that with a model which is operating at the individual bee level. So it's a host parasite model where you've got your host model running alongside your parasite model, which is running together, and that's what's really cool about it. And what we're really hoping that we can get out of going through this process is that we can look at all the different resistance mechanisms that are being developed in honeybees at the moment, and we've got a lot of them, haven't we? You know, you can go through people getting excited about uncapping at the moment and recapping. That's an exciting. We've got people in the past getting very excited about grooming for Varroa. We've got Varroa sensitive hygiene.
Exactly.
We've got suppressed mite reproduction.
Yes.
There's all these different ways that we can try to encourage resistance in our bee population. What would be great would be having a model that told us how that might be having an effect directly on the mite population.
And is it worthwhile doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things about models is that you can do something called a sensitivity analysis. And a sensitivity analysis is a fancy way of saying that when we've got a parameter, and it might be grooming, let's say we've got a parameter like grooming, we can ramp it up and ramp it down, and then we can say, and how did that affect the overall population of the Varroa mites? Was it a little bit, or was it a lot? If it's a little bit, don't bother spending a lot of time assessing your colonies for grooming, because overall it's probably not going to make much of a difference. What you might really need to do is have a look at something like I don't know, recapping or something. I don't know what the answer is yet.
Recapping is the big hot at the moment,
isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah.
But will you? I remember when the first talk was about that. I was very, very exciting. Will it be kind of an online tool, or is it just a model on a piece of paper, so to say? Or can I, as a beekeeper, kind of sitting there and put different parameters in, and then I say, wow, this is how my beekeeping priorities are going to happen during the next years, let's say Varroa tolerance, resistance.
So the job of this work package is to develop the model and get it working and look at the outputs. The job of another work package 3, is to pick the model up and then turn it into a decision support system. And so take it from something which is very academic and turn it into something which is more applied. And that's going to be CREA, which are going to be doing that element. When we've done it before, I think it's a really important point, but when we've done work before where we've developed models and we want to try to help people in society interpret the outputs of those models, we've always developed these things called shiny apps. Have you heard about shiny apps before? Yeah. So it's another way of coding a window which allows people to interact in different ways with the model. So they can have a slider, go back to grooming example. How much grooming do you have? How many mites do you have? You can have sliders. You can talk about what ecotype of bee you're using if we find a difference with those. And then you can press go. All the model runs in the background, and the beekeeper will get a result out, whatever that result might be. And they've been very effective before, but I don't know how Dario from CREA is going to do it with our model for BeeGuards yet. That part of it is yet to be determined. It depends a little bit on the direction that our model takes as we're developing it right now.
But it's really, probably he's sitting there and waiting for your model, and then but we will push him. Us from the dissemination group, we will push him and tell him, hey, this needs to be nice online or something like that. But it's also, the whole story that you're telling me now is also that the BeeGuard work packages are not just individual packages, they are actually connected to each other, and we are forced to work together. And this in my life is very nice. You're good at making models, maybe they're good at making online computer software setting up or something like that. Yeah, great.
That's right. Yeah,
more.
Okay, so that's the first task that we're really excited about, and Holly Puffle is our postdoc on this, and we're actually going to finish this podcast, and then we're going to continue developing the functions of that model. We're really excited about it at the moment. The second task is very much about trying to understand how climate change might in the future impact which diseases are important. And we've done some work on this already. So we've got some modelling frameworks which we use in the UK using data from a government inspection programme on a range of different diseases which have a space and a time. So we know where a disease was found and we know when it was found. We've then obtained the climatic information from around those dates and sites. And then we've run some models to say, okay, how much of the disease prevalence, how much of the disease occurrence is maybe resulting from certain climatic conditions. So how much of the variance can we attribute to climate or different aspects of climate? And that's a paper that a PhD student of mine, Ben Rowland, produced in 2021. So anybody who was interested in that can look that up. And so what's great about that is that we've got a modelling framework we know works, we've got data sets we know we can work with, and we've done it for the UK. How about doing it for other parts of Europe? So BeeGuards is all about taking that structure that we already have developed and applying it to different countries across Europe so we can get a better idea for European countries. Once we know what climatic events might drive certain disease epidemics, and certain diseases are more likely to occur. So we found, for example, that European foulbrood is much more likely to occur when the humidity is high than when it's low. So if we think we're going to get more rainfall and more humidity, then in the future, when we look at climatic predictions, we can say that it's going to rain more. We know it's going to rain more in the UK.
And more dramatic.
Yeah, going to be more intensive. Yes. These climatic shocks are going to be more frequent. So we can then say, actually, whilst some parts of Europe might not have a problem with European foulbrood today, in the future, that might not be the case. We might start to see an emergence of something like European foulbrood.
So better get prepared.
So it's all about being aware. It's about being prepared. And that means that we can actually start to almost mitigate these problems by making sure that people have the right advisory materials, which traditionally might not have been useful for them, but in the future may well be.
I mean, I have the funny story because I've been in the business forever. And, at the beginning, Varroa mite was something in the Southern Europe or Eastern Europe. It will never. And now today you can see what happened with it. So I really love it. And I think it's very nice and important work that you're doing because climate changes is a fact. It's really a fact. And what concerns me the most is that it seems that the climate changes are more intense. I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't discover that before I die or something like that. Now I can see it from year to year. We have heat record, the warmest summer, warmest September, warmest this and this, and the most wet. And we can see what's going on now in Southern Europe with the floatings and so on. So it's well done, great.
Yeah, it's exciting work, and I think it's incredibly relevant. There isn't a beekeeper across Europe that shouldn't be able to look at this work package and say, actually, this is pretty relevant to me, either now or in the future.
Yeah.
And it's actually the third task is very much heavily related to climate, because one of the things that you just mentioned about heavy rain, or we've seen droughts in recent years, haven't we? These are events that we might call climate shocks. These are climatic events which are generally shocking to the organisms that are trying to grow and live through them. And the third task is all about trying to better understand how these shifts in climate might be impacting our bees' ability to forage. Now, why is a work package focusing on pests and diseases interested in why our bees forage? Well, because if they don't forage, they don't bring in nutrition. Actually, we're less worried about honey here. We're more worried about pollen. Honeybee colonies carry around 4 days or so of pollen stores. If they run into difficulties being able to forage because of climatic events, their pollen stores go low. Their pollen stores are their protein stores and their nutrition stores. And with poor nutrition comes poor immune function, and with poor immune function comes increased susceptibility to disease. So boom, we're back in work package 6, worrying about pests and diseases because of climatic shocks, effectively.
I mean, just to make it very easy, when I'm under heavy stress, I'm getting sick. It's
exactly
so
the same.
Straightforward, kind
It's
of.
exactly the same.
And I have a funny story from an old beekeeper, and he always, as his big argument was, my father did this, and we were sitting there and thinking, okay, your father, he died 50 years ago, so but that beekeeper kind of copy paste what his father did, and that's why I like what you're doing here now. We need to adjust to new conditions. We cannot do as we used to do. I would love to do what I used to do, because that's the easiest thing in my life, to kind of keep my bees running in that way. But we have to adjust and change, and yeah.
And that's why it's so important that these work packages are talking to each other.
Exactly.
Because we will pass to you as dissemination, and you will tell people about our findings. But also, when we want to try to better understand how climate is influencing the way that bees forage, we need to do that across a large area of Europe. And that's where work package 1 comes in, because work package 1 apiaries are distributed across Europe and beyond. And then that's where work package 3 comes in, because there's a digital apiary network with sensors telling us when those bees are foraging, telling us when they're finding forage, telling us when they're raising brood in the winter. All of these things could affect the pests and diseases. So having that as part of this project is great, because it means that we can use those data to help to parameterize our models, to help to put information into our models and get relevant data to the ecotypes of the bees that are being kept in those locations, because we can't assume that these bees have the same foraging profiles. Some of them will go out in much colder weather, much wetter weather. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about some bumblebees. Now, where were they? They were right up on islands right in the north of Norway, and these things were out. It rains all but 30 days of the year, and these bumblebees are out foraging. So they must be local adaptations that allow these insects to operate.
Otherwise they wouldn't survive.
Otherwise they wouldn't survive. Exactly right. So that's the next part of our work.
My concern is actually that the very heavy climate change is that you don't have the possibility to make this adjustment, local evolution, or what you call it.
Yeah, you need time for your local ecotype to adapt. And as we see these changes happening more rapidly, it becomes more of a challenge. Yeah. And I think that I think some more of our genetic variation gets left behind because it can't make that transition to the new version of the world. So
we're losing good genes.
We're losing genes which just for that moment weren't useful. But then perhaps tomorrow when Tropilaelaps comes along, maybe they would have been,
Don't mention it.
Oh, well, that's the next work. That's the next task. That's why I'm mentioning it.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay, so that's the third task. The fourth task is actually being headed up by Apimondia. So we have Jeff Pettis from Apimondia who is leading this particular task. It's a very important task because, again, it's looking to the future. It's looking to the future resilience of beekeeping by trying to understand better where in Europe Tropilaelaps mites might be able to establish and spread. Where in Europe small hive beetle might be able to spread. And these are pests that we traditionally across Europe, apart from perhaps some parts of Italy with small hive beetle, we haven't had to cope with these pests before. And we can talk about our bees being naive to these pests. Our beekeepers are naive to these pests too. They don't know how to control them. So this task is all about better understanding where they might spread. Would you, surprise, it's a model, right? We're going to look at modelling. We're going to use all the similar sorts of information that I talked about in the other tasks. But we're also going to convene workshops where we go to the experts from around the world that have been coping with these pests on a day-to-day basis. They've been managing these pests already for years, and we're going to ask them what works, and we're going to try to put together some management plans and translate those into different European languages.
Yes.
That means that we've got that preparedness for these future pest problems in a way that we never did have for Varroa. When Varroa arrived, what can we do? Let's throw chemicals at it because it's the quickest thing we can do to control that mite. With a bit more experience, imagine how our response would be now with all of the knowledge and experience we have about bee breeding, and appreciating local diversity, and using slightly softer chemicals and caging the queen. Imagine how that advice would be different for our beekeeping population now, should Varroa have just arrived, than it is today. So we're hoping to use that information, bring it together, and disseminate it to beekeepers.
This is very nice. Again, we always come back to the Varroa mite. So I remember we knew, I'm from Denmark, so we knew for 10, 15 years that the Varroa mite would turn up. And still, surprise, surprise, the day when it turned up. And then we got into what I call a panic phase. Okay, we have to kill the bee colonies, maybe even kill a beekeeper, that would also be nice. And then we were so unprepared, so let's use very heavy pesticides. So if you can, I'm really hope that you're succeeding in that kind of calming it down. We take it, it's there, it's part of the beekeeping, and here we have the paper, the protocol, how to kind of cope with that instead of this panic phase, which is not good for the business.
No, it's not good, because within panic, it's really poor. It shows very poor resilience, doesn't it? Is it? Panic is not resilience; it's the exact opposite. Okay, so that would be our fourth task within.
Just to mention, Apimondia is the World Beekeeping Organization. They kind of have members all over the world, so they're a very nice partner to have in here.
Yeah, and isn't there an Apimondia coming up next year?
And by the way, now you mention it, there will be an Apimondia Congress in Copenhagen 2025 from the 23rd to the 27th of September. Everybody, please join us. Giles will probably be one of the
I'm hoping to be there.
important speakers, yeah.
Don't know how important, but I'm hoping to be participating, certainly. So we've gone through 4 of our 5 tasks. I just have the last task to tell you about, and it's a change of gears. It's a different approach. It's an interesting approach, an idea that Andreas Hopp brought to us. Really interesting concept of taking an existing tool that bee breeders use in beebreed.eu and adding some functionality to that allows breeders to collect information on different diseases. So collecting information which is quantifiable, so whether a disease is present at a low level, a medium, a higher or a highest level. And then we can start to consider how breeding values relate to resistance to different diseases. There's lots of cool things about this. If you think about some of the modelling work I just talked about, where we're trying to predict what might happen in the future, if you've got a large network of breeders across Europe monitoring for disease, then you're monitoring for disease in real time. So you're able to see these diseases changing over time. But even better than that, when it comes to tools for beekeepers and bee breeders, is that these breeders can see which lines are more resistant to diseases. Like, I'll give you an example. One that we've looked at already is chronic bee paralysis, which is caused by chronic bee paralysis virus. And that can be a very severe disease. It can, in the UK, it tends to kill around 40% of the colonies that it's reported in. And the other remaining 60% won't produce honey that year. So from the point of view of a beekeeping operation, it can have a big effect if they have an outbreak of chronic bee paralysis. And Andreas has already shown me some data that suggests that you can start to see that some lines are more resistant to this disease than others within beebreed.eu. So it's something which seems very simple. It's been implemented very quickly, and it's going to have a big effect straight away. It's already having an effect today, even though the project is, I would say, still in its infancy. We're still in the first year, But actually, this is one of our tasks, which is running at pace. Okay.
So maybe Giles, we should just add a few words on BeeBreed, which is an online program produced by our colleagues in Berlin, and is more or less used by many queen breeders all over Europe, where they can go in and then they can put all, you could say, their breeding values in there. And then in my life as a simple beekeeper, it's kind of calculating everything, and then it keeps track on the pedigrees, and it's actually giving you the best lines that you can use. And the idea is now to add a few more things or other diseases into it.
Yeah, it's basically adding columns to a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it is.
And then you're giving the bee breeders the opportunity to use that information to screen their lines for resistance. We had a talk earlier today about a commercial operation in Austria. With 15,000 colonies,
I think,
and they're using beebreed.eu, and they were showing all of their breeding values for Varroa resistance.
And probably he could not do that work without that program.
Exactly. So it's already in use, certainly across
many years.
Yeah,
and that means that we also have lots of queen breeders out there knowing how to use it.
Yeah.
So we don't have to learn them or change the habit in their breeding life.
No.
Go and use that program, and it's simply there and they're using it.
Yeah, and it also means that our project, and certainly this work package, but also the rest of our project, we're not looking to be an island which floats around in beekeeping space, exists for 4 years, and then disappears. Because what we're trying to do is put in place these tools that beekeepers will be able to use long after BeeGuards has departed.
Gone, yeah. Nice. And also, if you are a queen breeder and you keep your data for yourself, the data is gone the day you are gone, so to say. And with the BeeBreed, it will be there forever. So they have maybe for 20 years or 30 years. I don't know how many years they have been running, but quite a lot of years.
Yeah, the speaker this morning talked about the first breeding values being entered in 1988, which is interesting, right? It's a long time.
Okay, wow. I'm looking forward to see how you're progressing. We will follow you. We'll scratch you on your shoulders.
Looking forward to that.
And ask you once in a while, how are you doing? So, thanks a lot.
No problem. No, nice to chat.
Thanks.